Okay, I wanted to talk about this redemption story, and then I'd love to get your calls and your thoughts. By the way, in our second hour, from quarter after the hour, roughly an hour from now, 55 minutes from now, well, actually, 1 hour, exactly 1 hour from now, from 20 minutes past the hour, the next hour, until 45 past the hour, Congressman Mark Pocan is going to be with us, taking your calls. So we're just, we're tossing this out to various members of Congress to say, Bernie's on the trail, campaign trail. On Fridays, he used to take calls from our listeners. He can't do it. We asked Congressman Pocan if he could be on for the hour, but he's in Madison today, and he's got a couple of events that he's got to do. So he's available for a half hour, so he'll be taking your calls. And in our third hour, Richard Sharman is going to be with us. He's a research quantitative analysis and model developer who thinks he has demonstrated that the election in Kentucky was stolen, which should be really interesting. That'll be at the top of the third hour of our program, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Mountain, and noon Pacific. So, do I have that right? Noon Pacific? No, I don't. I was off by an hour on all of them, wasn't I? It's at 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central, noon Mountain Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Thank you so much for my math abilities. Back to redemption. I remember back probably, well, it was more than a decade ago. It was in the late 90s. I took this amazing course on screenwriting and novel writing by a fellow by the name of Robert McKee. And in fact, robertmckee.com is his website. And if you have any interest in being a fiction writer or screenwriting or anything like that, I strongly recommend both his course and his book. I took his course 3 times. Louise took it twice, and our youngest daughter took it once with us. So blew me away. I mean, it's a 3-day weekend course. Friday night, all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and like by all day I mean like an 11-hour all day. And it's just genius. And he wrote a book called Story, Robert McKee's Story, that's really worth reading. But one of the most important things that I learned from that course was that one of the principal reasons why we read fiction, particularly big fiction, I mean like novels, the novels of substance. The reason why we love these is because in them the principal character changes. Now, the secondary characters tend not to change. They're the same at the end of the novel as at the beginning of the novel. And as such, they hold supporting roles to facilitate the change of the principal character. And the tertiary characters tend not even to be three-dimensional. They tend to be more black and white, more kind of in the background. Yes, there were, 5 waiters in the room kind of thing, while the 2 of them sat at the table having this deep conversation. One is the consistent secondary character. The other is the primary character, the protagonist who's going to change. And one of the things that really blew my mind was when Robert McKee taught us that the reason why we're so addicted to fiction, and by the way, this applies to movies too. In any good movie, you will see the same thing, that the protagonist, the principal positive character, the protagonist, the hero or heroine, changes. And in fact, the typical story arc is actually, it's what's called 5-part story structure, based on the 3-act play of, and this goes back to literally to Aristotle. But 5-part story structure, you start out, your character is confronted with an event that turns his life upside down. Now, in the case of Ben Carson, this was his anger. He hit his mom with a lock. He threw stones at cars. He was just like, this is his story, was that he was an angry kid. So that's the inciting incident. This is literally right out of classic How to Write Fiction, the inciting incident. The inciting incident is followed by what are called a series of progressive complications. Progressive complications are when the character tries to figure out how to get better, how to get his life back into balance, how to get her life back to normal, and makes decisions about that. And each decision just makes things worse. And so life is just getting worse and worse and worse, and the character is getting farther and farther away from where they wanted to be through the progressive complications. And that's usually 2/3 of the story. Right? The story opens with the inciting incident, then you got all these progressive complications. And then comes the moment when the principal character realizes, if I don't change, I'm going to die. if I don't change, I've got to change. And that's called the crisis. And the crisis is followed by what's called a beat, or a couple of beats. There's a pause. When you're reading a novel, typically you'll see 2 or 3 pages here where you see the character just agonizing over this. In a movie or something, you can just see the character just going through this. Oh my, do I really have to do this? And then the climax is when the character actually discovers some new power that they had inside, deep inside, didn't realize they had, and they succeed in a way that they didn't expect. And they change. And then the 5th part is the resolution, and that's where you get to see the character in their new and improved persona, their new changed format. Well, that's the story of Ben Carson finally reaching the crisis. His crisis was hitting his friend with the knife, and the knife blade broke, and he viewed that as divine intervention, which led him into the bathroom to pray, which was his climax moment. And then out of that, the resolution was the rest of his life. I mean, his story, Healing Hands, is literally written identical to how a novel should be written. And the thing that blew my mind that Robert McKee said was that in real life, this almost never, ever happens. We'll be back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-536-2370.
The flip side of that, of course, is that in real life, it actually sometimes does happen. And so, it's entirely possible. To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.